You are listening to the Body Charge podcast, and I'm your host, Sandy Sanderson. Welcome to the Body Charge podcast. Today's topic is how to recover from chronic fatigue after trauma. Military service members who have returned from combat are at an elevated risk of suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, also called PTSD, as a result of traumatic events they may have witnessed or experienced directly. According to a recent report by the Department of Veterans Affairs USA, of the 6 million veterans who served in fiscal year 2021, about 10% of men and 19% of women were diagnosed with PTSD. My special guest today is Rachelle Davis, a retired combat Airforce veteran who had suffered from PTSD and had discovered a successful strategy to heal and recover. She now works as an holistic chronic fatigue health coach in her company, Your Healthy Life. So welcome, Rachelle. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes, it's a pleasure. I've been looking forward to it. Such an interesting topic because it's really so relevant today with the escalation of wars on the planet. Despite most people I talk to not wanting them, I often ask myself, how are we in a world where nobody wants war and yet, always on the planet somewhere it's happening. It's not really a desirable thing, is it? We don't want it, but sometimes we find ourselves in the middle of it and have to deal with it the best we can. So my first question for you is, what was your role in the Air Force and where were you deployed to?
Yes. So when I was in the Air Force, I worked in air transportation. And so that is working on the flight line, helping to upload and download cargoes and passengers. Okay. And so I was deployed to Iraq and also to book Saudi Arabia. And then as a civilian, I went to Afghanistan. And I was also deployed to UAE, for anyone who knows United Arab Emirates.
Emirates. That's quite
Yeah.
extensive. Yes. So that's how many years did that span?
So that spanned, well, my whole career was 8.5 years. And so it was about 2 years, I think, that took place when I was deployed, I would say 2 or 3, because I was deployed when I was stationed in Ramstein, Germany. And then also after that, I went to Dover Air Force Base in Delaware.
And how old were you when you started this particular part of your journey? How old were you when you were deployed?
Yeah.
Your first mission?
Mhm. So when I first went into the Air Force, I was 23. I wasn't, normal 18-year-old that goes in right after high school. But I think when I deployed, I would say I was about 27 when I deployed. Yeah, for the first time.
I think 20s is still quite young, isn't it? I'm 65
Yeah,
and it all
yeah,
seems, oh my gosh, just a baby.
right. Exactly.
So what were your expectations at that age before you went into it? What did you think might happen or where you were going or what it was going to be like? And how different was it to what you actually experienced?
Well, I don't know that I had so many expectations. I know I was there to do a job. I know that in the beginning when we went to Iraq, that there were bombs and whatnot, dropping on the flight line. And I guess I just focused on doing my job. And I guess I never thought of myself to end up in an environment such as that. You know what I mean? And so then you kind of know a little bit of what to expect, but then you don't really know the whole picture because you've never been there, in that type of environment before.
Yeah. So there's a big difference between what was in your imagination and what you were confronted with in the reality, in
Oh,
the ground
absolutely.
or in the air, as it were, with you. And so do you think that difference, that shock of the reality, that contributed to the trauma that you had, which led to the
Oh,
PTSD?
yeah, because, when you're in the Air Force, you're focusing on your job and even if there's something else that happens or, happens to transpire, um, your first focus is always going to be on your job. So, you're going to have the mindset of, okay, this happened, but I still have to complete whatever it is my job is. So it kind of makes you put whatever's happening at the time in the back of your mind. So you don't really have time to deal with it like a normal person would, you know? You have to just carry on and continue what you're doing.
Suck it up and keep going, right?
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm.
So there's a part of us where we can compartmentalize, we can separate ourselves out of it and sort of almost be an observer or a passenger to try and deal with something really horrible that's happening. So it's almost like you're in a state of shock. You know, when people are in a car accident and they're like, they have a glazed stare and they're not really comprehending what's actually happening because there's a protective mechanism which steps in to the mind, which separates us out from the trauma. We kind of have this distant feeling of it's happening, but it's not happening. You know, am I walking through a dream or is it real? Did you feel like this kind of confusion about what was real and what wasn't real?
No, I mean, it was pretty real, that situation. It's just that, it's kind of like, even if you are scared, okay, you're scared, but you still have to continue doing what you're doing, and everything you do will affect whoever flies in that plane, their lives. So you have to really make sure that you do your job well and you do it correctly. But I don't know that I was in a state of disbelief. Um, I can't say that. I just think that you don't get a chance to deal with your feelings at that time, whatever they are.
So you postpone them. So you put them in a box somewhere inside for
Yes,
later.
yes, yes.
Because you had a huge responsibility. I mean, you were carrying human cargo as well as other vital materials and foods, I guess. That's a big responsibility. A lot of people relied on you. So
Well,
you
I didn't
felt,
actually fly on the airplane, but we were on the ground. And so,
oh, I see.
like, yeah, so for example, if we had to secure cargo, you know what I mean? We had to make sure that the plane was correct weight and balance, because if it wasn't, if something came loose, if it wasn't tied down properly, then that could take the whole plane down. You
Yes,
understand what I mean? So
yes,
that was very, very important to
yes,
make sure that was done
absolutely.
correctly.
I,
Hmm.
I, I think of things like that all the time when I'm traveling somewhere by plane and I look at all the ground crew and the staff
Hmm.
loading the planes and checking the wheels and the fuel. And I'm thinking, oh, thank goodness, this team is working well together because if there's one weak link in the chain,
Hmm.
bang, things don't work. And that's quite dangerous.
Yeah, very. Hmm.
So let alone the danger of avoiding the bombs and
Mm,
the enemy attacks. You've still got to keep your wits together to try and get the
exactly.
job done, as you said. Ye-
Exactly.
Yes, so I guess you matured a lot or you grew up a lot during that time. How much did it change you?
Mm, it definitely changed me. Once you're in that type of an environment and then you come home, you definitely appreciate everything that you have and the people around you, your family and whatnot. You appreciate life a lot more. Definitely.
So what kind of symptoms did you start to experience and how did you get a diagnosis for PTSD? What things were happening to you?
Well, mine was more like I didn't want to be around anybody, that type of thing. So isolation, I would say. Um, Anytime just watching something on TV, it could be the news of soldiers dying, reports on that, or somebody even retiring, something like that. And that would make me, well up and want to sob. So that is how it affected me. Um, yeah,
You felt super sensitive, to very slight provocations.
yeah. And
Very,
just I
teary.
remember, yeah, there's in Virginia, there is the Arlington National Cemetery, and it's where all the soldiers have been buried from all the different wars. And so I remember we had been driving in Virginia or DC, and we kind of turned around in that area, and I kind of felt like I was going to freak out. You know what I mean? It just brings up a very unsettling feeling to be in such an environment. Yeah.
Yeah, so and the chronic fatigue side, how did you experience that? Was that like difficulty to get up in the morning? How did you experience chronic fatigue?
Yeah, so this actually I experienced after I got out of the service, years later, I guess I would say a few years later, and I got out and then I went back to go overseas, but this is the first time I went to Afghanistan, and I was working as a civilian contractor. And so our hours were like 12, 14-hour days. We worked 7 days a week. And I did this for a total of 3 years. Okay. And so the last 6 months of my contract, I decided that I just wanted to make money and I'm just going to work, nonstop because normally we would take an R&R every 3 to 4 months. We'd take like a week or two off and go somewhere else, travel, rest, restore ourselves and whatnot. And so I decided I was going to work the last 6 months all the way through. And I had a horrible supervisor. I was stressed out. I didn't even realize it really at the time. And I was working nights. Okay. So the whole time since I was so stressed, I was so ready to go home. Um, and so about a month and a half after that is when everything, all the symptoms started to kick in. I didn't realize that stress could take you to that point where, you just don't function the way you used to. And because I was working nights, it completely messed up my circadian rhythm.
Hmm.
Um, and so that stress and just that whole last 6 months, that whole experience is what completely shifted my health. And so what happened was I started not being able to sleep through the night. Um, I was feeling, fatigued, throughout the day. I would wake up if I did get to sleep at night, about 3 o'clock in the morning with hot flashes. Okay. And so besides that, I was having issues with my gut, my digestion, and um, my issue also was I was trying to, okay, let me work out, like I would normally work out, thought I was eating right, and I just couldn't lose weight. I was like, what is going on? I just felt like there was really something going on with my body. I was exercising and I injured myself. Um, so these are all different symptoms of chronic fatigue, not to mention
So,
brain fog. Yeah,
sounds
I
sounds
mean,
like the symptoms of menopause.
and that's what um, this acupuncturist first thought that I went to.
Mm.
First, I went and got a regular physical. Okay, I got my blood pressure taken, and my blood pressure was high. And I was like, oh, blood pressure high. My blood pressure is never high, never has been high. It's always low. So that was my first indicator. I didn't know at first. Then I went to an acupuncturist and she, put me on some herbs. Oh, maybe you're going through early menopause. At that time I was 42. And I'm like, no, no, that's not it because I'm having all these symptoms, not just, hot flashes, not just that. Um, so then I decided because 2013 is when I actually got certified as a holistic health coach. And so I was just trying to learn as much as I could. And in that, I decided to go to a seminar, and the seminar was on stress. So once I got in the seminar, I'm like, wow, I was learning, listening, and I'm like, this sounds like what I've been going through, just, the stress part of it.
Yep.
And then along with that, after that seminar, we got a free physical. And so the acupuncturist, um, gave me a physical, and I told him what my symptoms was, what I was experiencing, and I told him about my blood pressure being high, and that never was like that before. And then he was like, "Oh, you have chronic fatigue syndrome." Um, and so with the blood pressure specifically, when you're sitting, that's resting, and that should be lower than when you're standing. But for me, when I stood, it was lower. When I was sitting, it was higher. So it
Wow.
was completely flipped.
Yep. And what did he
Yeah.
say was the cause of that?
Well, um, because of his education, 4 years going to school in the East, 4 years in the West, he explained, how he could actually diagnose it, and he did. And so whenever you have the flipped of the blood pressure,
Yep.
basically, when you categorize chronic fatigue syndrome, it's an issue with your adrenal glands, and that
Yep.
in essence, correlates with your nervous system.
Yep.
Um, so I mean, that was just one of many symptoms.
Yep.
And so it's kind of like you're stuck in fight or flight mode.
Yep.
And
Uh,
so a lot of that attributes to the issues that you experience.
yes, I had something similar happening to me, or in my past, even though I wasn't in a war. Um, I was working day and night for a while in a previous business that I had in a publishing business to get to print on time, because when the GFC hit, I had to
Hmm.
let go of some staff. So I had to do a lot of extra work myself to get to print on time, to meet the deadlines. And so I
Mm.
wrecked my adrenals as well. And what happened is, when they get really exhausted from staying up for a 24-hour shift,
Oh, yeah.
you think you're invincible at the time, but you're not. You do damage. Uh, they start to malfunction and fire off and push out adrenaline even when
Mhm.
there's no need to. You could just be sitting and resting, and there's no fearful ideas in your head. There's nothing. There was nothing I could think of that would cause suddenly my heart started to beat faster. I could feel that adrenaline rush. I'm thinking, where is that coming from? And it's the adrenals. They're malfunctioning. They're not working in sync with the body's needs,
Mhm.
because they're overloaded and exhausted. What I found that helped me the best was increasing my magnesium, because I had developed heart arrhythmias, and what's directly related is extreme magnesium deficiency that affects the
Yeah.
heart straight away, the whole cardiovascular system, and the electrical nervous system. So by lifting, because I had a fresh, healthy food diet, and I'd gone to the health food store and was taking a
Mhm.
handful of all sorts of different vitamins and supplements,
Yes.
nothing was getting to where it was supposed to be going, because I was still suffering so much from stress
Mhm.
and hadn't allowed myself to recover. Like you, I
Mhm.
felt I'd had to keep on that mouse treadmill. Had to keep going, keep
Yes.
going, keep going, mind over matter. But, you really do have to pace yourself, or you're not going to finish that marathon. You've got to give yourself those pause breaks, those times to recover. And the magnesium was the biggest factor for me to recover.
Mhm.
And I know, in hindsight, I don't know whether I was like that at the beginning or whether I became like that from the stress, but I now know I need 3 times the average amount of magnesium for me to feel normal and to have good balanced energy levels. So the blood pressure is interesting, isn't it? Because I was always very low in blood pressure. They couldn't
Mm.
they couldn't give me any medications or anything to fix the blood pressure
Mm.
medically, because
Mhm.
it would have given me a heart attack to slow the heart, because my blood pressure was way too low, which was a kind of blessing in disguise. Anyway,
Mhm.
everything normalized as soon as I picked up enough magnesium, and it took quite several months to refill those empty tanks. So
Oh,
your
yeah.
cells are storage tanks for magnesium, and when you have trauma or chronic stress or sleep deprivation, you're pushing out constantly lots and lots of adrenaline. You pee out more magnesium, so you tend to exhaust the stores of magnesium in the body, and eventually it causes a lot of downstream problems, which are all the symptoms that you've mentioned. So I probably suffered from a little bit of PTSD myself. And having looked at the studies in this area, I found that magnesium directly relates to the balance or functioning of the hypothalamic pituitary axis.
Mm.
So that's the whole endocrine nervous system directly is impacted by magnesium.
Oh, yes.
And so that's why stress has such a big impact on us, because it causes us to lose excessive amounts of magnesium. Unless you're taking a break, unless you're nutritionally putting enough back in to that bank account, you
Mm-hmm.
stay in deficit. And so obviously you've learned some secrets as to how to recover, because you've got this company helping other people recover from PTSD. So can you tell us the strategies that you've adopted that work the best for you in your business?
Yeah. So in helping people with chronic fatigue syndrome, actually, magnesium is one of the vitamins that or minerals rather, that I actually took, among many, because my body was completely, diminished of minerals and vitamins. In Afghanistan, it's really, really hot. Okay. It's like over 100 degrees. So you can imagine sweating,
Yes.
um, all
Mm.
day long and whatnot, on top of not getting enough rest, working, just complete burnout,
Mm-hmm.
what I experienced when I got home. But what I found is that anyone recovering from chronic fatigue syndrome, you have to have an approach of changing, of course, your health overall, but your lifestyle. You have to create healthy habits. You have to also, work on your nutrition. And there are foods that you should not eat. There's times that you should eat, and foods that you should combine when eating that will just work better, for your digestion. So what
Because
I've
stress
done,
stress affects
yes,
digestion a lot.
yes, yes. Well, you know what? I guess people would be surprised how many different things are affected, by all that stress in your body, because there's so many things that are affected as far as your body is concerned. And you can't just take one pill that's gonna basically solve all the different issues that you can experience, right? So
Yes.
uh, your nutrition,
You need a whole
yeah.
lot of plate spinning.
Yes, yes. Your nutrition, getting the right type of exercise. If it's an issue with your circadian rhythm, you want to get that back on track as well. You want to take the right nutrients, supplements, minerals for your body as well to recover. And so I created a whole plan and program around this idea, as well as tracking what you're doing every day. Like what time you go to bed, what you're eating, how you're feeling, um, as far as what you ate, if something's affecting you more adversely than something else. And with me, sugar was one thing I had to stay away from. I
Yes.
had a brownie and it completely wiped me out. Okay. I had to take a nap. I mean, I couldn't do anything else at that time.
Yeah.
Within
Like,
like 20 minutes, it would just completely wipe me out. So
was
sugar,
that as far as diabetes, or was it just metabolic syndrome? So
no.
that's a
Mm-mm.
precursor for diabetes. So that's something you have to be careful of, isn't it? If you have a
Well,
sugar
yeah.
sensitivity.
Well, it wasn't before. I never had an issue with, eating a cookie or brownie,
Mhm.
but my body was depleted so much
Yeah.
that sugar just completely um, brought on that fatigue.
Yeah. Directly affects the metabolism, because
Hmm.
what sugar does, it stimulates the release of adrenaline. So
Mm.
we then get a spike, but then it's followed by a crash. So the metabolism is up and down like a yo-yo. And what happens with sugar is that we produce too much acid. So if the body is already overloaded with acids and waste products, it's going to get another dump that it can't deal with. And that exacerbates the problem. So we become hypersensitive to sugar. And if the body's not dealing with sugar or waste products, um, it becomes the mitochondria start to shut down metabolism, so that you have a reduction in energy. It's almost like computer safe mode. Things are still working sort of okay, but not optimal level. So what I found in my case was by lifting magnesium, it supported the mitochondria to make more ATP energy. So that directly affects metabolism. When you have better metabolism working, your sugar sensitivity tends to decrease. You're not as sensitive to having a little bit of sugar, although I do recommend not having any at all. As we get older, we get less tolerant of it anyway, irrespective of stress levels. Stress levels just make everything worse.
Yeah.
But as we get older, we've got to, be more mindful about what we eat, how, as you said, how we combine foods. I find eating organic is much better, avoid processed foods, because we get exposed to chemicals, synthetic chemicals that can interfere with digestion. And also gut health, because our gut bacteria, we rely so much on help from the gut bacteria to help us digest the foods. That's why I wasn't getting anything from my tablet supplements. But the magnesium we eventually developed was a range of transdermal products, so you can get it through the skin, not have to rely on digestion. So I had to work on all these workarounds to get to the end goal, which is very possible and doable, and you get great results from it. You just, if you have a block over here, you just like water, flow around it and find another way to get to the goal. And where there's a will, there's a way, right?
Absolutely. Yes, there definitely is. I
Uh,
mean, I think it's important for people to understand that they don't have to lose hope. There is a way to recover, and it's going to be, in the most holistic, natural way that you're going to recover for something like this.
yes, definitely, definitely. It's about, I think, rediscovering who we are and understanding our body better. It's about listening and paying attention, um, and understanding how detrimental excessive adrenaline is to the body. It's very depleting. It causes excessive acidity and acids wear us down. It really erodes us faster. We age faster. So if you want to stay well and young and fit, you have to come back to balance all the time and learn how to do that. How do you come back to balance? Physically, mentally, emotionally, on all levels. So congratulations on all the good work that you're doing with
Thank
people
you.
coming back from war service. And it goes further. There are a lot of people on the ground everywhere, overworking on a treadmill, not giving themselves any time or space or paying attention to diet. It is really a fast road to destruction, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, it
You have to
really is.
reevaluate, to sit
Yeah.
down and have a good review about what you're doing.
Yeah, as we get older, it doesn't get any easier. Especially as you were talking about the magnesium. You lose it more, okay? You don't retain it more, you lose it more. In every way, sleep, exercise, in every way. Yeah.
It does. And if you can manage to put more back and get back to balance, you can stave off the aging process. Can't
Yeah.
not do it forever, obviously, but you
Right.
can live well as long as possible. Yeah.
hmm
And have a good experience in life. And that's what it's all about, understanding what we need to do to manage our physical selves, our mental selves, our emotional selves better. Then we have a better enjoyment. We can be a better role model for others as well, because we don't get taught these things at school. We need to
We
really
don't.
think about, how we're bringing up the next generation as well, so they can avoid all the pitfalls.
Yeah.
So would you like to just let people know where they can find you or know more about what you do?
Sure. So my website is askahealth.coach, and you can find me and all of the services that I offer there. If you need to contact me, please feel free to reach out. I'm here to help people. That's what I feel like my purpose in life is. So, anybody out there that's looking for a coach and you have chronic fatigue syndrome and possibly you don't know what to do, what your next steps should be, please reach out. Thank you for having me.
Nice. It's a pleasure. I'm sure our listeners got a lot out of it. Thank you too.
Thank you.
I hope you liked this conversation and will share it with others. Let me know what you thought about it in the comments below. If you want to listen to other Body Charge conversations, click like, subscribe, the bell icon, and click all notifications. Subscribe to our newsletter to get updates on blogs, podcasts, videos, and Magnesium special offers at electromagnesium.com.au. Relax, recharge, and recover.